Thank you. So indeed, good afternoon, everybody. I would like to continue on the topic of laying hen welfare and talking about our activities in enabling the transition to cage-free housing for laying hens. And I prepared this presentation together with my colleague Mona Giersberg from Utrecht University as well. And so we see that laying hens are increasingly kept in cage-free systems. If you compare the cage-free systems, birds have more space than in cages. They also have access to nests for egg laying, perches for resting, litter for foraging and for dust bathing. And these cage-free systems can be combined with a free range or a veranda, giving birds more outdoor access, access to fresh air, and an extra area for foraging and dust bathing. Here you can see a map of the world from a few years ago from the study from Shuk Paim and colleagues, showing the different countries with the size of their egg production. So the size of the circle is an approximation of the number of hens in that area. And you can see the cage hens in red and the cage-free hens in green. And if you would make the same picture today, I'm convinced that the green would be increasing in different regions, but you can already see that in all parts of the world, Europe, US, Latin America, Australia, Asia, Africa, there is development in cage-free housing of laying hens. Management of cage-free systems is more demanding than management of cage systems. The hens are kept in large groups of birds. In our situation, for instance, it's often subgroups of about 6,000 birds and flocks of about 30,000 birds. So that's quite something to manage. And behavior in those large groups is very important also as a tool to realize good animal welfare. It's about stimulating positive behavior, enabling birds to nest, to perch, providing good litter for foraging and dust bathing, providing enrichment materials. And it's also about preventing negative behavior, such as feather pecking, cannibalism, piling and smothering, and keelbone fractures. And to manage these cage-free flocks in a good way, experience is needed. This was nicely illustrated by the study I mentioned earlier, the Shuk Paim study from a few years ago. They did a huge data analysis with data of over 6,000 flocks, 176 million hens from 16 countries, and they compared data from conventional cages, furnished cages, and cage-free systems. And this was to look into this question of, is it true that in cage-free systems mortality is always higher than in cage systems? And in the end, and this is illustrated by the data from the two countries on the right, France and the Netherlands, they did find that the main explanatory factor for mortality, reduced mortality rates, was actually farmer experience. On the top you see France, in blue you see the aviary system, in red the conventional cage, and in yellow the furnished cage. And you can see that the mortality level in recent years is very close together and not significantly different. In the Netherlands, in the bottom, you can also see the cage-free aviary and the furnished cage, and there also there's no difference in mortality in the recent years. And they did see that indeed farmer experience was the most important explanation for a decrease in mortality. So farmers just get better in managing this rather complex cage-free system. And in the end, there was no difference in mortality in countries that already have a lot of experience with cage-free. So that's encouraging. But that also means that we should share best practices, we should share information between countries that already have a lot of experience with cage-free and countries that are transitioning or that are considering the transition. In Europe, we've had the project Best Practice Hens. This was a demonstration project funded by the European Commission to share best practices for keeping pullets and laying hens in cage-free systems. And we focus there on bringing together scientific and practical knowledge and translate these into fact sheets for farmers and for industry. We also included economic and market evaluations, because when the market is not there and when there's no a good economic model below a transition to cage free, it is unlikely to happen. And we also aim to provide practical tools to the farmers. So a protocol for an inspection walk on the farm where you actually look into more detail at the flock and also count the birds that you see with wounds or with feather damage or with other problems. And also look at how the flock is responding to humans, for instance. If I look at our main information in a nutshell, and everything is available on the Best Practice Hands website. One of the main points that we stressed is the rearing period. So early life from 0 to 17 weeks of age, that is really a period that matters. The birds need to learn how to navigate this complex three-dimensional cage-free system, how to go up in the system, how to find the nest, the water, the perches, the litter area. Also, the transition from rearing to laying is very important. That there's a smooth transition and a timely transition, that birds move to the layer house before they start egg laying. And we focused quite a bit on training farmers on how to observe their flock. And that's partly through this practical welfare assessment tool. That's also on the website. It's based on the Transact method proposed by Inma Esteves and Guru Vasdal. The link is also on this slide. And also to stimulate farmers and advisors to observe behavior in a more detailed way, because that's really essential in cage free to get an idea of what is actually happening in the flock. And then you can also take action if things are developing in a way that you don't want them to. Some of the key success factors from the Best Practice Hands project were these fact sheets, where we provided practical advice in fact sheets, and these are available through the website in different languages. We also involved stakeholders from the poultry industry, and that was very important. And those were stakeholders both from cage-free countries, in our case, the Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, France, but also in the target countries, and those were Spain, Portugal, Poland, and Belgium. And both type of stakeholders contributed to the best practices. Here in the picture, with the environmental monitoring, is a farmer from Spain who was really very excited to explain how he was managing his flock and how he was making use of different tools on his farm. And those were actually the strongest advocates that we could find, successful early adopters in the target countries. So I think that's really important to take along. And this links probably a bit to the previous talk about the trainings in Africa. But we also really feel that the cage-free system that you are advising should also be adapted to the local conditions. Should farmers transition to a high-tech aviary system or a more basic floor housing system? Is it a conversion of an existing house or a new build? It's also about proposing materials, for instance, enrichment materials that are locally available. This was also mentioned in the previous talk. So this table on the right is a table from our management guide for cage-free flocks in hot and tropical climates. And there we also try to advise things that are available in different climates. Instead of wood shavings, you might use rice hulls, for instance. And it's also crucial to consider local conditions, climate, available breeds, etc. It's not just copying the system from one country to the other. It's really about engaging with the local stakeholders. What I'm really excited about is these local training centers. Here you see an example from Indonesia. NGOs are establishing these cage-free training centers in countries where interest is developing. There's often a collaboration with local offices from housing constructors, lighting companies, breeding companies, that can also advise people in their own language on which choices to make, which system to buy, etc. And you have in this training center quite a basic cage-free system. In the bottom, you can see a picture of the house in Indonesia. Quite straightforward floor housing with a central aisle with the nests, the perches, and the feed in the water. A small flock in there, ideal for visits and for training, for questions, and to develop further. Recently, I was involved in a trainers event in China, which is, of course, a very large egg producer with over 3 billion hens, the vast majority still in cages. And there, Global Food Partners developed a training center at Shaanxi Agricultural University. And there we had a very nice event. You can see in the bottom right picture also the house that has just been converted, and the hens will be arriving very soon. We had a Train the Trainers event where we trained the staff from the university to, in the end, also give the training on cage-free systems themselves. This training involved international and local experts. The local staff will develop the training in Chinese and give it to groups of farmers, groups of people from industry, and also the trainers involved in the program remain available for support. And I think this is a very powerful model to really engage with the industry in the country to see what can be done and what is needed. To conclude, to support the transition to cage-free systems for laying hens worldwide, I think we should openly share existing practical knowledge and experience, really take into account local conditions and involve local stakeholders when providing advice, because it's not just a matter of copy and paste. And also, I think these training centers are key to serve as an inspiration for other farmers and advisors. And I think in that way, we can really move forward. And a final slide providing you with some links to the different materials we've been involved in. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Bas. We already have some questions here. For example, people want to know if there are any research comparing cage-free systems to other systems regarding welfare issues such as feather pecking.
Yes, there are comparative studies also from the past. Also, when in Europe, for instance, the discussion was between furnished cages and cage-free systems. I think a topic like feather pecking can be seen in all systems, also in cage systems. Of course, in cage systems, you do have the advantage that the hens are in a given cage, so feather pecking is less likely to spread to other cages, for instance. But also there you can see poorer plumage quality over life. What we also see in recent years is that sort of this restriction of behavior is becoming a bigger issue. Also, if you look at the recent EFSA opinion in Europe, looking at how should we move forward with our housing systems for poultry, then it's really the conclusion that the cage system is too restrictive and does not allow proper foraging behavior, dust baiting behavior, and also regarding nesting and perching is quite limited. So in the end, I think, we are moving towards the cage-free system. And I would also like to stress that many farmers are really quite successful in managing cage-free systems in a good way.
Thank you, Bas. We're running a little bit short on time, but I'm sure you will be willing to answer some of the other questions in the chat.
Sure.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and I will hand it over to Becky